We are here with Theo,
He is a poet based here in New York City.
and he is also Google Judy Wood. Could
Hello.
you tell us some about that?
Sure. I started tagging Google Judy Wood around New York probably about 4 months ago as my way of letting more people know about her work and the alternative theories to what happened to the original World Trade Centers.
Interesting. Do you think her theories haven't propagated as much because of her status as a woman?
I think she definitely receives a lot of sexism in her thing. She's been basically outcasted by all truth movements and has been basically an outsider despite having a huge amount of credentials and in investigating what happened on that day for about 10 years before the publication of her book, Where Did the Towers Go?
So could you go into more? Who is Judy Wood? What are her assertions?
Judy Wood is a PhD in engineering. She teaches engineering in, I think, Virginia before the publication of her book. Now she's been mostly focusing on the truth movement. She found inconsistencies in the official story and found a lot of information that shows that the towers did not actually collapse on that day, but instead turned into dust midair.
Dust. Really?
Yes.
So they just became dust?
Yeah, as opposed to like being pulverized, it would be more so the turning into dust. Because pulverization would imply that there was material pushing into things to destroy it all. Dustification is just a matter it's just the act of matter turning into dust. And that's something we've only really seen on that day. And yeah.
Why specifically Google Judy Wood, not search Judy Wood, or even just Judy Wood?
If instead of having a politicized tag that would say, here's what happened on 9/11, here's the controlled demolition, everything, everyone's heard all these theories and have learned to really just sort of, in America we put conspiracy theories as something to really just ignore. I feel like by giving this kind of enigmatic tag to look up information, it encourages people to find things out by themselves. They find like a curiosity in knowing something as opposed to trying to tell people what it is. I think it's more important to have people look at the information themselves and look at the evidence and pick up their own theories out of it.
So what do you believe the political ideology of Judy, or maybe this whole theory lies on the spectrum?
It's kind of, I think a lot of conspiracies now are kind of leaning back towards the theme of like common sense. I think we get lost so much in the official stories and stuff that people don't tend to just look at things the way they see them. I think anyone that saw the towers falling, or so-called falling, would see that this wasn't just any other sort of collapse of a building that they've ever seen. This doesn't look like a controlled demolition. It was something totally different and unique that happened. The dust that formed took up the entire downtown Manhattan. There was the dust like went out into space, and like satellite photographs show that the wreckage of the towers actually went up into the stratosphere. So the actual wreckage fall is millions of miles.
Could you go more into the bathtub theory?
If the towers, which was over 500,000 tons of material, collapsed down onto the ground, there is a bathtub underneath the World Trade Center. It was a canal that was constructed back when the World Trade Center was still near the shoreline of Manhattan. If 500,000 tons of material were to collapse down onto that bathtub, it would have flooded New York City, but instead there was very minor damages of this concrete embezzlement that blocked water from going down under to the parking lot and lower levels of the World Trade Center. So if the ground underneath the World Trade Center wasn't wrecked by 500,000 tons of debris, then really the only thing you can think is that the material must have spread out elsewhere.
As for
For
the
the
seismic
seismic
activity
activity
thing,
thing,
where
where
basically
basically when the towers fell, there was no seismic activity. I feel like that could happen in any like normal demolition. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right. There was only surface waves picked up, and surface waves are essentially like the vibrations of a garbage truck driving. Like that stuff gets picked up on surface waves. There was no P waves or S waves that would happen when any controlled demolition would take place. So when the buildings came down, you can even really see it in like footage that it came down really as a light drizzle all throughout the.
How do you feel generationally as a group? I guess you count as a millennial, but even my generation, Gen Z, don't have a real life experience of the events of September 11th. It's almost like a myth. It's something we've heard about, but never actually experienced. Do you think that might influence people's perception of the event?
I think that whenever a major catalytic event happens, it kind of traumatizes the major public. You see that in essentially anything that there is a lot of conspiracy theories towards, like the JFK assassination and other things. When society is really affected by an event, it's almost the collective trauma of them trying to figure out how to deal with it has a lot of people come up with alternative explanations. People tend to not be happy with the official stories behind the events that of the moon landings, the JFK, etc.
Do you believe in the moon landing?
Do I believe in the moon landing? Um, Not fully. No, I think there's a lot of things, a lot of fake things about that. The Soviets lied often on their side of the Cold War. I don't see why the Americans would do anything different. I think. Did we land on the moon? Mm, I can't say for sure. I would say probably.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe.
I would agree on that one.
I would say maybe.
So in this culture where everything through the media is even more mediated than ever before, do you think it's more or less difficult for dissenting voices to be heard?
It's interesting. I think honestly, the internet gives people a lot of gives people a good tool to communicate. I think it doesn't necessarily help dissenting voices. If anything, you see now that there's a lot of, and I mean, with the Russian election, you know that there's a lot of shills on the internet, and that's been real. It's been a real thing since I first saw it in like late 2000s myself. The government and other organizations and people with motives do put out a lot of disinformation in the comment sections of most popular articles, and I think first started a lot on Reddit. And
Do you believe like the term fake news is
I
accurate?
think fake news is used mostly by the mainstream media to kind of quiet down alternative news sources and blogs that actually have a lot of interesting and new information out there. They use the term fake news to try and have people only listen to like the mainstream media and their stories. I think that's what mostly that term is used for now. And Trump.
Yeah. So
Back to memorialization efforts surrounding September 11th. How do you feel about this whole complex that's been built, such as here, 7 World Trade Center, but also the annual Tribute in Light? Do you think that is
that's
appropriate?
appropriate?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, given that we're talking about directed energy, that they would choose to shine light up into the sky for 11 days on September. And I think it's interesting that the two buildings that shine up show the number 11 shining through there. I think there's a lot of things involving numbers that the people try to associate with large political movements and things like that.
Actually,
Going into-
you were speaking earlier about numerology.
Right. There's a lot of numerological anomalies that happened on 9/11. like that Flight 11 was the first tower to hit the building, that there was about 911 days between the World Trade Centers falling and the start of the Afghanistan war. There was the Pentagon being hit by Flight 77. The Pentagon is 77 feet tall when it was hit, and it was also on the 77th meridian of America, which is known as the American Meridian.
So this is more of a base 11 sort of conspiracy?
Well, that's, yeah. I feel like most numerological things go from 1 to 9, 9 being one of the most magical numbers, and 11 also being like this. I've heard that there's a lot of Luciferian like associations with the number 11, given that it's now like it's like the new beginning and a new start, and you get. And 9/11 also appears to people very often. It's known as like angel numbers, and it's one of the most like magical numbers that Luciferians use towards things. And yeah, Luciferians care very deeply that they believe that the numbers that they use have to be totally precise for things to actually work out, like for their rituals to work out. Like, well, personally, I feel like 9/11 was like one of the like largest Luciferian rituals that was like broadcasted worldwide. Anyone that really talks negatively about Judy Wood online will just go and say, "Oh, directed energy weapons. That's that's science fiction. That's not real." But Ronald Reagan started Operation Star Wars in 1989, I believe, late 80s, and that was when they were first like actually put in millions and maybe billions of dollars to study directed energy weapons, laser beams, using light and mirrors and radiation. I'm saying that the government has been funding directed energy weapons since the late 80s, and that project has been divided and renamed by different administrations, but it's still active, and we're still giving billions of dollars into this technology. America illegally invaded Panama, and witness accounts there said that they were using laser beams to cut through cars. So that when the army was coming and raising the cities. And along with that, there's also the active denial system, which is used by the army as a non-lethal protest weapon, which radiates. It shoots out microwaves at people and immediately makes them feel as if their body's on fire. It radiates the upper skin of the people and causes them to immediately flee. Yeah, something that happened on 9/11 that we had never seen before in this nation's life, and what happened on that day was used by our leaders to fulfill the New World Order that they had planned early in the early 90s with George Sr. Bush. And on that day, and this technology, it does exist, and it is being used in government operations throughout the world and today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this interview here at 7 World Trade Center. It was great meeting you.